Abora boy.
Aboru boye gbogbo awo aboru boye ẹ̀yin babaláwo èèyàn ìbọrù boye.
Abora boy, good morning. Thank you all for tuning in. This is Olu Fakola Day of Idinka IFA Temple. So I want to begin with morning prayers today. Let us begin. Mojuba lorun, mojuba eleta, mojuba lorun mare, mojuba bobo rumele, mojuba bobo emale, mojuba bobo egun tembile solodo mare, mojuba shungwere, mojuba gwere, mojuba fragaramus, mojuba tuwa, mojuba flori, mojuba palau corriente, mojuba Felipe Zalawatu, mojuba gunjobi, mojuba mieye, mojuba shamola, mojuba shalanko, mojuba mitonade, mojuba shibu, mojuba ba, sejumanade from the first, I won't baba. Ejogbe. He who hears people's pleas and accepts a pleas. He who hears people's pleas and approves a pleas. He who talks people and ensures that the talk is completely absorbed. He who hears people's pleas, accepts the pleas, name of Vipa. He who hears people's pleas and approves pleas, his name of Dar. He who talks people and ensures that the talk is completely absorbed is the name of Orishanla or Shanli, the person modes and beings. Person modes one cannot fail to impress one. Strike frogs when some's rainfall. Bull frogs when someone's downpour. It is whatever that can read you point to tells us to accepts. Whatever the big rat tells us to accepts. All what I tell you, five. Please accept and approve it. Shit. Otorete. Show gratitude upon gratitude. The all of gratitude. To display benevolence upon benevolence is the all of benevolence. Whoever does not show gratitude, yes, says benevolence. Such a person will not receive today's utility. These were the declaration fought to the foreigner on my land. I'm going to marry your boy, daughter reach Buji. I'm grateful. I see my gratuity. I'm grateful yesterday's favor. I'll see today's gratuity. Otorete, we are very grateful. Awa dupe, awa bure, awa dupe, oh, awa bure, adupe, anawa obure to nebo, olodumare, awa dupe, awa bure, awa dupe, oh, awa bure. Adupa now obore to nebo awa dupe awa bore awa dupe o awa bore adupa now obore to nebo Orisha. Olodumare and the divinity, we thank you for life, we thank you for health, thank you for food, clothing, and shelter. We ask that you would forgive us. Forgive us for the times that we broke any taboo, any things that we might have done wrong, incorrectly. Counting down without tutu can be very difficult to consume. These were the decorations of Ifa to a tutu, the child of Agbaneragoon. He was full of bad character. He was bad attitude. I prevented him from entering Tutu's domain. Now come to solicit on behalf of it, Tutu. We've come to beg on behalf of Tutu. Father, please be patient. Overlook this provocation. Those who beg on behalf of Tutu. Father, we ask that you would continue to forgive us. We ask that you would continue to ward off death, ward off sickness, cases, controversies, ward off fights, litigation, losses, and our fights, ward off witchcraft and negative energies from us. And in its place, give us long life, good spouse, good children, longevity, prosperity, victory over adversity, peace of mind, joy, healing, success, and all the good things of life. Oh, Lara, Rumla said it is time to sleep. I echoed it's time to sleep. When the day dawned, I met Rumla in the 16th room, where he covered his head with the flowing gown full of lice. He was wearing a dress full of bloodstains. He was snoring heavily. They told him that a delegate from his disciple had arrived. Rumla inquired what the delegate had brought. They told him they brought 2 rats swift and running, 2 fish graceful in swimming, 2 birds swift in flight, and 2 goats with big livers. Rumla said, that's not enough to wake him up. I admit my ignorance, please educate me. Motuna Karaba, I hide myself in your bosom and survive. Motuna Karaba, The dog king masqueraded beats Agbajon repeatedly. The dog king masqueraded beats the Agbajon repeatedly to perform rituals because of children. You are the leaders, we are the followers. Leaders are the ones who show the followers wisdom. Rumla told them to get alligator pepper, to get cola nut, to get bitter cola, to get alcohol. The capo got the alligator pepper. He got the cola nut, got the bitter cola, and he got the alcohol. That is right, as now that he is fully awake. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me with your eyes of compassion. It is with eyes of compassion that the heavenly stars usually look at the stars below. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me with your eyes of help one to secure great wealth. There's such good eyes that the heavenly stars usually look at the stars below. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me with your eyes of help one to secure a good spouse. There's such good eyes my spouse should use and look at me with. Rumla, when you're fully awake, please look at me with your eyes of help one to bear many children. There's such good eyes a child should use and looking at a well-decorated plate. Before long, not too far, join us in the midst of all we in life. IFA, we call on you with Oshe Arula. Tiny are the feet of Tubu. The stripe of a Kumayan is not big enough to use his headgear. Had it been enough to use his headgear, I would have taken it home and adorned my head with it. These IFA's decorations through Arula. We're going on a spiritual mission to Jebelan. We've called locals being sent pay money. Call South and make it rich. We're calling out Arula with respect in the Jebelan. Oshe Arula is a good old Oshe Tura. I kick any baggies, the extract shop against the tree. Cast it off the room when you see deep and share from all of the mind. No one is real, to surely be wealthy. I kick any baggies in the mouth of an old Zibana share in the mouth of an owl. No one have joy, surely joy. I kick any baggies in the mouth of an owl Zibana share in the mouth of an owl. No one have victory, surely victory. I kick any baggies in the mouth of an Zibana share in the mouth of an owl. No to have all the good things of life. You should live all good things of life. I kick in it by these signs. The mouth was Zibana Shan, the mouth was Torres. Maybe so surely shall it be. Ashe Orisha, lẹ́nu mi o, Ashe Orisha, lẹ́nu mi. Gbogbo tí mo bá màmá wí o, ìrúmọlẹ̀ ó bà. Ifá ó bà o, Ashe Orisha, lẹ́nu mi. Tí mo dúró, tí mo dúré. Timo bare, Timo sure, Timo kule, Timo sure, Timo joko, Timo sure, ire Timo su oritibo. Now if we can hold our heads, our ori is our good luck charm. Ori eni, larure eni o, ori eni, larure eni. Mojulo mi fa wa mori, ori eni larure eni. Bobore chasu, Ifá ọba Ọlọ́run, àtìbàjájú, Ifá ọba Ọlọ́run, Oshe Aru Ila Ifá ti bọ́. All of them are in the divinities. We've come, we've given thanks, we've given praise, we've asked for forgiveness, we've asked for the things that we need. At this time, Ifá, we ask that you would ward off all death, ward off sickness, ward off cases, controversies, ward off fights, litigation, losses, outright fights, witchcraft, and negative forces from us. Bring to us long life, good spouse, good children, longevity, prosperity, victory over adversity, peace of mind, joy, healing, and success. Move my ego out of the way so that we can hear a word of Ifá, so that we can hear something good. Olodumare, please remove all the challenges that many of us have been facing this week with COVID-19, with taxes, with bills, with problems. Help us so that at this moment in time, we can receive a word of encouragement from Ifá that will help us to make it through the week. I call on you. Emma kami mene amo, Emma kami mene ano, Emma kami mene adeloku. Samuole to Ifá lóní mi, Ebora ti mpani mi, ẹni bana mi, àwọn àti Ifá lẹ́lẹ́jọ́. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. I'm so thankful for everyone tuning in with us today. Today is going to be a really special service. I want to talk about some interesting things that really relate to many of us as African people, coming into an African tradition like Ifa. So before I begin, I want to thank all of the supporters of Idinka Ifa Temple, all of the supporters, all of the members, all of those of you who contribute, those who are so instrumental in the work that we do from Ifa Domininu, my wife. Thank you so much for your support. To my parents, Catherine, Robert, Edmonds, my sister Awojola, my Oluo, Chief Shalagbere Popola. I want to thank you all so much. I want to thank um, one of my first Baba Ifa in the form of Jose Rodriguez Agbola. I want to send greetings and shout outs to all of the Shekundarin family from Oturtuka, El Turpon, Ishokun to Oluenla, Enver, Olayemi, and also send love and shout outs to uh, Oluenla, Irawefa, and so many others. I don't want to miss people, but I just want to send love and shout outs to all of you because all of this comes together for us to do the things that we do. So, this sermon today is entitled Working My Roots and Faith of Our African Ancestors. When we think about this, I titled it that way because it's so important as African people to talk about roots, to talk about origins, because in coming into Ifa, coming into Santeria, coming into various African traditions within the diaspora, we come into it with the desire of reclaiming something that was lost. And that is so important. I'm not belittling that at all. That is important because something was masked, something was taken, something was removed. And we, as African people, practicing an African tradition, and anyone else who is not African, who is practicing an African tradition, these are things that you too must be aware of when you step into the space of Ifa. I come to you with an African calling. I am not here by myself. I'm not here because I just said, I want to do this. Da, 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 da. It wasn't my choice. My ancestors brought me here. I came with my ancestors. My ancestors brought me to Ifa. We need our ancestors, and our ancestors in so many great respects utilize our energy to manifest and get the message across. In the Odu Ifa or Wonrin Shogbe, Ifa says, if we keep quiet, all our problems will continue to stay with us. Let me say that again. If we keep quiet, all our problems will continue to stay with us. Ifa's message for Egungun when going to Oje land and would return through Oje land. He was advised to offer a bow. If we do not miss our road, we will not get the right direction. Ifa's message for Egungun when going to Oje land and going to pass home through Oje land. Now, you children, you will lead me to Koto. At Koto, where we all come from, you are the ones who will direct me to Koto. At Koto, where we all come from. This is such a powerful Ifa because what it is talking about is this special relationship between the children and the ancestors. The children are just coming from the place that our elders are going to. The children are just now coming from this place that's filled with ancestors. Ancestors have sent many of them. When we speak of names like Babatunde, Iyabo, Iyatunde. All of these things, all these names give us an understanding that many of our children have been here before. These children are actually ancestors returned. Baba Tunde, Baba, Father, is here again. He's coming back. He has come back. So when we think about Egungun and children, that too is the link. But in this Ifa, the Egungun masquerade had gone to Ojeland. And as they're going through this area, they got lost. And they are trying to make it back home to Koto. And it was through the help of the children that they were led back to their home, to the land of Koto. So when we think about this, we as African people who have been displaced, we as diasporic individuals who have been displaced as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and white supremacy, we have a duty to embrace our ancestral tradition. It is our duty to do that. And it is our duty to also, in embracing it, assist in directing that energy. Much like the ancestors were assisted by the children. When we think about this Ifa, I also think of another powerful Ifa verse, and it comes from the Odu Iwoya Weda. Ifa says, one's destiny is not amenable with strong charms. Instead, Ifa advised us to use Ebo to amend it. This was the Ifa cast for Oganjobi, who declared he would not worship Orisha anymore and would choose to worship other people's ancestors. Unknown to him that another person's ancestors do not give one support. Let me say that again. Unknown to him that another person's ancestors does not give one support. I will only plead for pardon on one of my predicaments. If the hunchback refuse to go, let the crippled legs become straightened. This is also such a powerful, powerful verse. Just that little part where it talks about Oganjobi and he says, I don't want to worship Orisha anymore. I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. I don't want to deal with these ancestral traditions anymore. I'm going to go and worship somebody else's ancestors. When we think of this, I want to paint a picture to you and say that any tradition, any religion that is against your natural DNA of who you are is foreign to your DNA. It is as if many of us as African people have been put in a position through colonialism, through global white supremacy and racism, have been put in a position where we now worship the ancestors of someone else. We worship the ancestors of those who killed our ancestors. We worship the ancestors and the traditions of people who would destroy us. It is incumbent upon us to understand and worship our own. As it said before in Iworia Weda, unknown to him Another person's ancestor does not give one support. What does that mean, man? That's such a deep and powerful Ifa right there. Because in essence, to pay homage to someone else's ancestor or someone else's tradition, those spirits, those forces are kind of like, oh, cool, all right, thanks. But I can't help you because this thing is about blood. Many years ago, I wrote in a poem, "My blood remembers you. My blood remembers you." I imagine this as words being said from my grandmother. My blood remembers you. I imagine this as words being said by my great great grandfather. My blood remembers you. I imagine this in the words of our ancestors and in the words of our ancestral traditions. My blood remembers you. When we think about that aspect of blood and the DNA test, and we think about many people searching and finding their ancestral DNA, it's very important to do so. That can give us some additional information as to who we are, especially for many of us who have been displaced. And as I said before, for many African people coming into this tradition, we are rebuilding and remembering and rememorizing and reassembling an identity that has been destroyed, distorted. And I say, as practitioners of this tradition, it behooves us to ignore that. If we ignore that, then we are not doing this correctly. And that goes for Africans in the diaspora, that goes for Africans on the continent. If we don't address that issue of ancestry, of the breach that occurred, we're doing something wrong. We're missing it. The Oduifa Otropomeji says, "It is now a painful dirge. The Iyeri it is now a pitiful day. The Iyeri is now a dirge. When eyes become two, they watch events unfold. When legs become two, they walk with heavy treading. The buttocks, when it is two, it sits on the mat. One hand does not jingle. Also, one leg will not walk with fast treading. How can one refuse to answer the call from responsible people? I am also asked to kneel and greet those before me. I knelt and greeted those before me. I am asked to kneel and greet those and call on those behind me. I knelt and called on those behind me. They ask, who are those before one? I say it is one's paternal ancestors that are before one. They asked, who are those behind one? I said that it is the Orisha in one's paternal household that are behind one. When Alapan Dede bird builds its nest, it is suspended in the sky, looking at God in heaven and looking at human beings here on earth. Atang Gegege, divine Ifa for Odushola, child of Aranche, whose father died when he was a little child, without the knowledge of how to cast Ifa, without the knowledge of how to print Odu, and not having been to Ife to witness the Ifa festival. When all the ritual elements are assembled for Odusola to start propitiating, he broke into tears, saying he didn't know if it was water that needed to be offered first. Heavenly spirits descend and make this ritual successful for us. Heavenly spirits, whether it is jinn that should be offered first, I do not know. Heavenly spirits descend and make this ritual a success for us, heavenly spirits. Whether it is cola nuts that we must offer first, I don't know. Heavenly spirits descend and make this ritual a success. Heavenly spirits. When we think of this IFA verse, and those of you who have experienced IFA initiation, you will hear this verse, or you'll hear that verse chanted in Yoruba. And what it is basically saying is we're coming here and we're about to initiate this person to Ifa. And we want to do it right. And we might miss some things, but we want to do it right. I don't know whether I offer cola nuts first. I don't know whether I offer water first. Why are they saying that? Because something happened. There was a breach. There was a break. And we are calling on our ancestral spirits to help us fill in the gap. Ashe. Let's say fill in the gap. We are calling on our ancestors to fill in the gap. I've studied, I've done as much IFA study as I can do at this point. I'm going to continue to study. I'm here to do this ritual, but I want to do it right. I might be missing something. Ancestors, come on down and help me. It's like preparing grandma's stew, preparing grandma's special gumbo. At a certain point, you might call on grandma to assist you in the preparation of that food. We are calling on our ancestors to support us and fill in the gap. Be our memory where we don't remember. This is so powerful. So when I made the flyer for this temple service, I included a very important picture. So I want to talk about that. And as I said before, we are African. Even if you are not African, if you are not Black and you are practicing an African tradition, you must assume an African identity, an African mindset in order for what you do to make sense. If you don't have an African collective mindset, then you're merely going through the motions of doing IFA stuff. If you don't take on a different identity, if you don't take on an African worldview, a spiritual African worldview, you can't do this right. Example, anytime we have to offer an animal, we don't typically cut it up and throw it away. That is wasteful. We prepare it and we butcher it and share that with the community. If there are people who don't have food, you always got food. I always got food right here. I got a freezer full of goat, chicken, whatever that we can prepare and share with the community. If we practice this tradition from a Eurocentric standpoint, from an American standpoint, then, well, shoot, I don't have no space for this food. I'm gonna just throw it away. It goes to waste. When we speak of practicing IFA, in a roots way, in an African way, that means we're all connected. So it is impossible to do this right without having an African collective mindset. So everyone entering into this has to change their mind. So I say this and I say that we are African people. The things that white supremacy tried to do, tried to wipe out, tried to wipe away, they truly couldn't wipe away. They couldn't wipe away ancestral DNA. They couldn't wipe away ancestral memory. And I say that because IFA is in us. It is in our blood. It is in our DNA. It is the only religious tradition that has been spread as a result of the oppressed. If you are not African, I'm not saying that you shouldn't practice an African tradition, but I will say you must reconcile with your ancestors in doing this. These are things that we don't often talk about because so often IFA and African tradition becomes so commerce based. It becomes so commerce based. And the reality of it is what happens if, and this is real stuff, what happens if the ancestors who enslaved and killed and murdered your ancestors want to come into this process? What do we say then? We have to figure out a way to heal. We got to figure out a way to have a sit down, a parlay about what's happening on an ancestral level because it plays out in the real world. What happens when that happens? Because it happens. And we cannot deny it. We can't ignore these things. So we all must reconcile our ancestors when entering into IFA, into these African traditions, because some of our ancestors had their own ancestral ways. So perhaps that's something that we need to address. I say that we all need to ask ourselves, why do we do this? Why you practice IFA? Why you practice these African traditions? You know, I read a book a while ago, and I'm not going to name the name of the book, but it said that Obatala was a white man. How in the world could that be? In the deepest of Africanness, how is that the case? And this is the misknowledge and misinformation that oftentimes gets passed on through individuals who appropriate the tradition and use it for their own selfish desires and also use it to, in essence, use it for commerce. So on the flyer, the reason why I organized the flyer the way that I organized it is I put a person by the name of Bishop C.H. Mason, who's the founder of the Church of God in Christ. I wanted to present Bishop Mason to many of us because he has a very unique ancestral approach to practicing Christianity. Bishop Mason was a root man. He was a hoodoo conjure man. And when we think about that, I just need to let us know that this is a tradition that comes out of the liberation of African people in the Americas, in North America. And this is a tradition that encompasses some aspects of Yoruba, some aspects of Congo, some aspects of Fan, other African aspects and indigenous aspects. And what the world would have you think is that white supremacy just removed the whole culture from the African, especially Africans in America. That we have absolutely no connection, no cultural retention associated with Ifa or any other African tradition. Like they just wipe the slate clean. I'm gonna tell you right now, them folks ain't God. They can't take what's in us out of us. Bishop Mason was instrumental in maintaining many of these traditions, but we don't really talk too much about them. Why is that? In in that hoodoo is an aspect of Ifa. In hoodoo, many of our ancestors were able to keep Ifa alive, so that 2, 3 generations down the line, coming out of hoodoo culture myself, Ifa, and I see the connection. My blood remembers you. Many of us as African people in the Americas have our roots in hoodoo root work, conjure, and don't even realize it. It is ingrained in our culture of who we are. And I will posit that Ifa is ingrained in some aspect in who we are. These roots are the things that have drawn us to Ifa. I will say that I personally, I wasn't called to Ifa because I wanted power. I didn't come to this to be like, you know, I'm gonna make I'm gonna make you do this, or I'm gonna use this ashe to hurt someone. It wasn't that. It wasn't even I'm gonna use this to buy a house. It was it was something in my blood, something that my ancestors called me to. And I personally say that as African folks in the diaspora, we may be the ones to transform the narrative. So I want to end this sermon by telling one last story. This Ifa comes from the Odu Ogunda Oshe. And in this, there was a woman, um, and Ogun was commissioned to wage war on a particular town by Oduduwa. And he waged war, and he was told to bring Oduduwa back all the spoils of the war, bring back all the gold, all the prosperity, and even the people, because people too are wealth. And in the process, Ogun met a woman, and I believe her name was Akange, and he fell in love with that young lady. And he brought her home with him, and he gave all the spoils of the war to Oduduwa. In the process, Eshuodar began to sow some discontent and said to Oduduwa, Baba, did he give you everything? Did he give you everything from the war? And Oduduwa said, yes, he gave me everything. What about the woman? Did he give you her? Oduduwa began to inspect. And he goes to Ogun and he says, you didn't give me her. You didn't give me everything. So he forced Ogun to give up Akange, not knowing that she was already pregnant. So she was brought into this space with Oduduwa. And she then married Oduduwa by force. Shortly thereafter, she gave birth to a child. It was a son. And I believe they called him Oranlonyo. And in the process, as Oranlonyo grew up, he was asked to go to various lands to establish those lands. And it was very interesting because in this aspect of Oranlonyo going to establish different townships and everything, what they didn't realize is that he was basically going there and conquering, going there, and he would wage his war and establish and plant his flag. He did things like Ogun did things. And as a result, they changed his name from Oranlonyo to Oromiyon. So many of us might know of Oromiyon as the father or one of the progenitors of the Yoruba people. He is one of the individuals who is known to have been the patriarch of Benin, not Benin Republic, but Benin City, and also of Oyo and other Yoruba nations. He helped to go and establish those places. And as he began to become more successful, he became known as Oromion. So interestingly enough, Oduduwa went on and went back to Orun. And his son inherited the nation. And when Oromion inherited the land, he became the new king. And as he was the new king, the town began to suffer. At certain moments, the yams didn't grow right. The people became dissatisfied, and he went to cast IFA. And the Babalao said, Oromion, what you need to do, you need to go and offer a bow, but along with offering a bow, what you need to do is propitiate the ancestors of your father. You need to propitiate your dad. So he went forward, and of course, who do you think Oromion thought his father was? He thought his dad was Oduduwa. So every time he would go and pay homage to Oduduwa as his biological father, and nothing would happen. He would come back and he said, I've done everything you said for me to do. The Babalao said, go. Maybe you need to propitiate them harder. Propitiate them with this. He goes and he propitiated his ancestors again, and nothing happened. The, the nation began to fall further and further into peril. Finally, Oromion went and he was extremely frustrated. And he said, I've done everything, and this isn't working. And the Babalao then said, perhaps you need to speak to your mother. Many of us have gotten that sign. Many of us have gotten that notion to go and talk to your mom. Go and talk to somebody who was there when you were born, someone who knows the circumstances of your birth. Many of us need to go and become the historians of our ancestral lineage in order to support and perpetuate this tradition. And she shared with Oduduwa, she shared with Oromion that his father was not Oduduwa. Indeed, his father was Ogun. And then he was able to go and propitiate Ogun, and his nation came together. When we think about these things, I want to slowly end and say we need to investigate our own blood. We need to investigate our own roots. That is essential to this practice. It is something that oftentimes becomes overlooked, but it is still very important. Our ancestors have a vested interest in us. They have a vested interest in us to the degree that if we don't look good, they don't look good. They have they have a reason. They have a stake in our success. And if we do not call on them, we are negating an amount of elevation and success that we should have. You ever notice at every nail shop or shop in the community that might be owned by individuals that might be outside of our community, at all of these shops and stores that I see in South Central, what's one thing I see every time? One thing that I see all the time is an ancestral altar. They might have a little Buddha with some incense. They might have an altar with some sort of fruit on it. But my point is when many of us are like, man, why are these individuals who don't live in our community? Why are they able to be so successful in owning businesses in our community? Perhaps it is because they pay homage to their ancestors. So, as I close, what I would like to say is it's so important. It is imperative for us to investigate who we are and accept who we are so that we can elevate. Accepting who you are is about loving who you are, loving yourself, loving your imperfections, loving your skin, loving your kinky hair, your wide nose, your big lips, or your slender nose, straight hair, and big lips. Loving the aspects of who you are that Olodumare made. This is the essence of working your roots. So work your roots, folks. Work who you are. Accept your own and be yourself. Aboraboy. I thank you all so much. I hope that that process, that discussion, that sermon was beneficial and rich for you. I pray that no one was hurt or offended by anything that I had to say. But I know that I had to say it. I pray that many of us will get a deeper understanding of IFA and get a deeper understanding of our own ancestral ways. And that will be a good way for us to truly understand IFA even better. So, with that, I wanted to make a few announcements. If those of you who are interested in supporting the temple, you can make any donations that you may desire. That will assist us in continuing to do these live streams. And also, we're looking for building here in Los Angeles that we can do our work out of. Also, we just performed Itarogun. It will be done hopefully by the beginning of next week. So those of you who are interested in the aspects of the Itadogun, the Akoshes, various things, it would be easier if you communicated with me and also you came by the house to pick it up. I still need to get out the Akoshe from the last Itadogun, but everything should be ready to go by tomorrow. So I would like for you all to just communicate with me, through text or what have you, so I can get that stuff to you. Also, we will be uh, performing a ritual to honor Eshu this week, and I will be either streaming that or I will do a video of that because this is around the time of Eshu is not Satan. So we need to endorse that campaign. I want to go deeper into that idea because out here in America, we don't have that same notion of Eshu being Satan. We don't have that same idea. It doesn't have the same connotation. Although on Google Translate, when you type Eshu in, it says Satan. So we really don't have that notion. But one thing I want to encourage and do with our personal campaign is talk about the fact that our African traditions are not evil. That's in essence what we're saying. So Eshu is not Satan. Ifa is not demonic. Palo is not bad. Our ancestral traditions are not evil. Voodoo is not bad. We need to decolonize our own mind. And that's truly what that this campaign is about. So that's what I want to do, and I want to talk about that further. Um, and every Friday we do IFA class. So those of you who are interested, you can come on in that way. Many people have communicated with me, and they're like, "Man, I can't find the sermons." Yes, I'm taking many of the sermons down. Many of them are down already, and what I want to do is create a system so that people can access them through subscription, so that I can further support the work that we're doing. So if you like what we're doing, tell us and tell others. Let others know about what we're doing here at Idinka, and I thank you for that. All right, so I want to end once again with prayer. I call on Olodumare. I call on all of our collective ancestors. I ask that you would support us today. I ask that you would open our eyes to who we truly, truly are. Not only seeing ourselves in the way that God sees us, but to see ourselves as interdimensional, to see ourselves as timeless. Because if we trace our ancestral lineage back, our first ancestor is God. Help us to truly see the lineage that got us here. I thank you so much. I pray for you all. Thank you all for tapping in with us and keeping it so luscious and soulful. I pray God's blessing on all of you. Ashe, Aboro.